Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do here is go ahead and load those images that I need. So I'm going to go to Load Images, go to my directory for treads, and I'll click Open. I'll just grab all 4 of those and open them. And there we are. You can see that they're nicely nested in our clip browser there. However, I'm not going to use them just yet. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and place the procedural images on here. But in order to do that, I have to have a material. And if I jump over the shader tree, I don't have a material specific for this sole. So that's what I've got to do. So what I will do now is go to the polygons. I'll click 2 adjacent polygons, hit L for loop, go over to the select tool, and I'll go to close loop, and that's going to select all those polygons right there. And I think that's good. And I will hit the M key to create a material, and we'll call this, let's see, bottom. There we go. All right, so that's all I need to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and just close this because we don't need those images for right now. And I'm going to go ahead and add a layer, and that's going to be a procedural image, and I'm going to type linear. And it's right there. I've kind of experimented with this a little earlier, so I know what I'm looking for. And at the same time, I'm just going to go ahead and open up the preview render there. And let's line up our camera. I think we've got it right there. Okay, there's nothing really fantastic on this. And now also with camera, I might want to go to trackball rotation and hit yes as well. That way it's a little easier for me to rotate around that. Okay, so now I want to change some settings in here. So first of all, the first thing I want to do is change this from solid to a UV map so that it maps onto the UV. And then we're going to select which UV map we want it to map to, and that would be the sole bottom right there. Okay, so that's kind of what I want. Now I'm just going to adjust a few of these settings here, and you'll notice that I'm just viewing this as a diffuse color right now because this is the fastest way to actually see the result of the procedural. So I'm just going to jump over to the properties panel for the texture, and I'm going to leave the seed number and the smoothing the same and repeat checked, and I'm going to jump down to the bottom. And I'm going to just take the lower clip, well, I'll leave that the same, and I'll change the upper clip to 115. And the bias will change to 20%. And the gain, I'll bump that up a little bit to 82% right there. And that'll give me a little more contrast in the image map. Now let's jump over to the disturb controls, and I'm going to leave the disturb seed to 500 and change the octaves to about 2.8. And now I have to set the magnitude. Notice it's set to 0 right now. That's why we're not seeing any distortion whatsoever. And if I change that parameter to 3.5, now we can see the distortion actually occurring. Now I'm going to move to the disturb scale and move that up to 4.65 or right around there. Now it's getting there. Now let's see what our procedural looks like as a bump map. So I'm going to go over to the effect column where it says diffuse color, click on that and change that to a bump. Now let's go ahead and change the bump to a displacement and go down to surface shading. But before we do that, however, let's change the material, or at least the displacement distance, to about 5 millimeters so it doesn't go crazy on us. Now let's go over to the effects column and drop down to surface shading and change it to a displacement. And there we are. Now there's one more parameter that I want to change within the procedural's properties, and that is the full 3D distortion. Just click on that. And what that's going to do is it's going to flatten out the pattern more for me so that it looks more like treads, flatter treads. Now remember, since these are displacement maps, we need to make some adjustments on the render settings area and just click the settings edge tab there and go down to the bottom where it says displacement as bump and just make sure that's checked. And you can adjust the displacement rate and minimum edge length if you think it's necessary. Otherwise, if your render looks fine, then you can just leave it at the default settings. But these are the settings that I find most useful.